Throwaway because people from work read Reddit. Also sorry for length. But I need this out of my chest. After a course of chemotherapy, I still went to the office to work. I'm writing that sentence again because even now it sounds unreal. Chemo on Thursday. Office on Monday. Sometimes chemo on Friday. Laptop open on Saturday. Not because anyone forced me with a gun to my head, but because I needed normality like oxygen. Because work was the only place where I wasn't the sick one, just a project analyst with deadlines and spreadsheets, and a badge that still opened doors. Or at least, that's what I thought. For context, mid-sized company, modern corporate culture, glass walls, inspirational posters about resilience. Yes, really. LinkedIn speeches about empathy. I'd been there 4 years, built processes from scratch, trained half the department. My boss, let's call her M, joined a year ago. Loud confidence, expensive blazers, always talking about energy and brand presence. The kind of person who smiles while interrupting you. At first, she was fine, slightly condescending, but I'd dealt with worse. She praised me in meetings, forwarded my emails with great point, added on top, took credit light but not enough to ring alarms. I ignored the little things. I was tired. I was fighting cancer. I didn't have the energy to police egos. The first red flag should have been when I told HR about my treatment schedule, officially, for flexibility. Unofficially, because my hair was starting to fall out in the shower and I didn't want rumors. HR was kind, M was performative. "Oh my God, you're such a warrior," she said, loud enough for 2 coworkers to hear. "But don't worry, we're a results-driven team. As long as you deliver." That sentence stuck to me like a smell. Chemo changes you in ways people don't warn you about. You're cold all the time. Your face gets pale no matter how much sleep you fake. Your eyebrows give up without notice. I started wearing scarves, light makeup, wigs when I had the strength. Some days I didn't. The office noticed. Not in words, in looks. The quick glances, the awkward smiles, the way conversations stopped for half a second when I walked in. M noticed too. She stopped inviting me to spontaneous meetings. Started saying things like, "I didn't want to bother you, you look tired." My tasks changed. Less strategic work, more, "Can you just check this quickly?" My ideas were suddenly interesting, but maybe too complex right now. Then came the project. I had spent 6 weeks designing a workflow that would save the company serious money, real numbers, real projections. I sent it to M with a full breakdown. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Literally. A week later, there was a department-wide meeting. Big screen, coffee catered, M standing confidently at the front. She presented my idea. Not inspired by, not building on. Word for word. Even my phrasing, even my examples. She didn't look at me once. People clapped. Someone said, "Brilliant thinking, M." Another added, "This is why leadership matters." I sat there, bald under a wig that suddenly felt too tight, hands shaking, realizing something ugly and clear. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't stress. This wasn't ignorance. This was the beginning of my humiliation. And I didn't even know yet how low she was willing to go. I wish I could say the humiliation was loud and obvious, like a slap. It wasn't. It crept in quietly, disguised as professional concern and standards. The first direct hit came on a Tuesday morning. I remember because Tuesdays were blood test days, and my veins were already sore when I walked into the office. M called me into her office. No email, no calendar invite. Just her head popping out of the glass cube with that tight smile. "Can you come in for a minute?" Her office smelled like expensive perfume and coffee I wasn't allowed to drink anymore. She didn't ask me to sit. She leaned against the desk, arms crossed, eyes doing that slow scan over my face, my scarf, my pale skin. She sighed, loudly. "We need to talk about your appearance." I blinked. I actually checked the room, like maybe someone else was behind me. "My appearance?" I asked. "Yes," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "We have a dress code. It's forbidden to be pale and bald in the office. You'll scare the clients." She said it like she was quoting policy. Calm, matter of fact. Like this was about shoes or hemlines. I didn't answer right away. My brain stalled. I remember noticing a plant behind her. Fake, dusty, and thinking how absurd it was that the fake plant looked healthier than me. "I just finished chemotherapy," I said finally. My voice sounded distant, like it wasn't mine. "This is medical." She waved her hand. I know, and I'm so proud of you," she said. "But clients don't need to see that. Maybe you can work from home until you look more presentable." Presentable. That word lodged itself somewhere deep in my chest. I asked if this was an official decision, HR approved, written somewhere. She smiled again. That smile she used when lying. "Oh no, of course not," she said. "This is just me protecting the team. And you." I left her office shaking. Not crying yet. Shaking. Like my body understood before my mind did. After that, everything changed fast. My badge stopped opening the executive floor. By mistake. Meetings were rescheduled last minute, and somehow I never got the updated link. Emails I was copied on suddenly stopped including me. When I asked questions, the answers were vague. "Oh, we already handled that. M decided to simplify the process. We thought it might be too much for you right now." My workload shrank, but not in a kind way. Not accommodation, erasure. And then there was the whispering. I overheard two coworkers near the kitchen. They didn't see me. "She looks really bad," one said. "Yeah, I heard M is worried about optics." Optics. Like I was a cracked window. The worst part? M started changing the story. In meetings, she'd say things like, "Given her condition, we decided not to overwhelm her." Or, "She asked to step back," which we fully supported. I never asked. She told people I was fragile, unreliable, grateful for her protection. Meanwhile, my idea, my project, was moving forward under her name. I saw my charts in new decks, my words in client emails. Once, she even corrected someone using a term I had invented. I started doubting myself, wondering if I was overreacting, if chemo had messed with my perception. But then came the email. An all-hands announcement praising M for innovative leadership, officially assigning her as the owner of the initiative I built. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I realized something cold and clarifying. This wasn't about clients. This wasn't about concern. This was about power, and about how easy it is to take from someone when they're visibly weak. That night, I took off my wig in front of the mirror. Pale, bald, scarred. I didn't look scary. I looked like someone who had survived. And I knew then that M wasn't done humiliating me yet. But neither was I done noticing. The confrontation didn't happen the way movies prepare you for. No raised voices, no dramatic slam of doors, no clever one-liners delivered with perfect timing. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, quietly, after everyone else had already decided I didn't matter. I knew something was coming because M suddenly started being nice again. Too nice. Slack messages with smiley faces. Hope you're feeling better, dropped into the team chat like a landmine. That fake warmth that only appears when someone is about to finish you off politely. She asked me to come into her office again. This time, I sat down without being invited. She looked annoyed by that. "I wanted to align on expectations," she began, folding her hands like a therapist. "There's been some tension. I didn't respond. I'd learned that silence made her uncomfortable. She continued. Given everything you're going through, I think it's best if we officially adjust your role. Less exposure, less responsibility. Less credit, I said. Her eyebrows lifted. Not offended, amused. Oh, don't be emotional, she replied. This isn't about credit, it's about realism. I asked her directly why my name had been removed from the project documentation. She leaned back in her chair. Because you're not leading it, she said calmly. I designed it. She laughed. Actually laughed. You sent me some notes, she said. Ideas evolve. Leadership is about execution, not attachment. Attachment, like my work was a stuffed animal I refused to give up. I told her I had timestamps, emails, drafts, proof. Her expression changed then. Not scared, not angry, bored. Listen, she said, lowering her voice. You need to understand how this looks. There it was again. Looks. You're sick. You're absent. You're visibly struggling. Do you really think the board wants to see you front-facing right now? I asked if she was saying my illness made me unfit. She smiled thinly. I'm saying perception matters more than intentions. I felt my hands start to shake under the table. I pressed them together. I never missed a deadline, I said. I delivered everything. Yes, she replied, nodding. And that's admirable. But admiration doesn't equal leadership. Then she said the sentence that finally burned through me. You should be grateful I'm protecting your job at all. I looked at her. Really looked. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect confidence built on other people's labor. And I realized something sharp and painful. She truly believed this. In her version of reality, she was generous, kind, reasonable. I told her calmly that her comment about my appearance violated company policy. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please, don't turn this into a victim narrative. Everyone has challenges. Cancer. A challenge. She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. I suggest you focus on recovery, she said. Let stronger people handle the pressure. Stronger. I stood too. My legs felt weak, but my voice didn't. I survived chemotherapy, I said. Pressure isn't new to me. She smirked. This isn't about survival, she replied. This is about relevance. I walked out before my face could betray me. In the hallway, I passed my reflection in the glass walls. Pale, thin, eyes too large for my face. For a moment, doubt flooded in. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was irrelevant now. A liability. A reminder people didn't want. Then my phone buzzed. An email notification. From a client. Praising the workflow. Asking technical questions. My questions. Addressed to M, of course. Copied to me by accident. And in that moment, something shifted. She could insult me, diminish me, erase my name. But she couldn't erase the fact that the work still needed me. And I decided then, I wasn't going to beg for dignity. I was going to let her underestimate me, right up until it cost her everything. I didn't cry right away. That came later. First, there was numbness. I went back to my desk after the confrontation and opened my laptop like nothing had happened. Fingers on the keyboard, screen glowing, Slack notifications blinking. The world continued at its normal pace while something inside me quietly collapsed. People say, humiliation feels like anger, but for me it started as confusion. A looping thought. Did that really just happen? I replayed her words in my head. Grateful, relevant, stronger people, trying to rearrange them into something less cruel, something reasonable. My brain kept searching for an explanation that didn't involve malice. Chemo messes with your emotions. I told myself that. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. Maybe I was projecting because I already felt broken. That kind of self-doubt is dangerous. It sounds like logic, but it eats you from the inside. I stayed late that night, not because I had to, because I didn't want to go home. At home, the mirror waited. At home, there were silence and pill bottles and the smell of antiseptic soap. The office, at least, had noise. Typing. Printers. Life. Around 8 p.m., I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. That's where it hit. My hands started shaking so badly I had to sit on the floor. Tears came without warning. Not dramatic sobbing, just steady, exhausted crying. The kind that feels like leaking rather than breaking. I pressed my forehead against the door and tried to breathe quietly so no one would hear. I wasn't crying because she stole my idea. I was crying because she took something else. The last place where I felt normal. Cancer already stripped so much from me. My body, my hair, my sense of control. Work was supposed to be the one thing that stayed solid, merit-based, rational, safe. Instead, it turned into another place where my body betrayed me, where my illness became a weakness others could use. Over the next days, the sadness deepened. I stopped wearing makeup. Not as a statement, out of fatigue. I wore the same neutral clothes, the same scarf. I spoke less in meetings. When I did speak, I second-guessed every word. My confidence, once quiet but stable, eroded fast. I noticed how people responded differently now. They talked around me, over-explained things I already knew, complimented me like a child. "You're doing so great, all things considered." As if competence needed an asterisk. Anger came next. Hot, sharp, sudden. I'd be answering an email and feel it surge out of nowhere. My jaw would tighten. My chest would burn. I imagined standing up in a meeting and exposing everything, the lies, the theft, the cruelty dressed up as leadership. But anger requires energy, and cancer had taken most of mine. So the anger turned inward. I blamed myself for trusting her, for staying quiet, for needing this job so badly, for being sick in the first place. I hated my body for failing me, then hated myself for hating it. Acceptance didn't come as peace. It came as exhaustion. One morning, standing in front of my closet, I realized I was choosing clothes based on how invisible they made me. Not professional, invisible. That's when it finally landed. This wasn't just about a bad boss. This was about what staying was doing to me. The humiliation wasn't only external anymore. I was starting to participate in it. Shrinking, apologizing, disappearing. And that realization hurt more than anything she had said, because it meant the next decision wasn't hers. It was mine. The decision didn't come with clarity or relief. It came with a quiet, almost shameful thought. I can't do this anymore. Not the job. Not the workload. I could still do that. What I couldn't survive was the daily calculation of how small I needed to make myself to stay acceptable. How pale was too pale. How tired was too tired. How invisible was safe. I started paying attention to my body again, not the way doctors do, with charts and numbers, but the way you notice a house that's starting to crack. Tight chest every morning before work. Headaches that appeared only on weekdays. The way my hands shook when M's name popped up on my screen. That wasn't recovery. That was slow damage. So I stopped reacting and started documenting. Every meeting where my words were repeated without my name. Every email where decisions I made were reframed as hers. The exact date and time she commented on my appearance. The witnesses in the room. It felt strange, almost disloyal, to treat my own workplace like a case file. But something about the structure grounded me. Facts don't gaslight you. Timelines don't lie. At the same time, I began detaching emotionally. I did my work. I delivered. I stopped volunteering ideas in open forums. If M wanted my thinking, she had to ask for it directly. And, in writing. She noticed. "You've been very quiet lately," she said one afternoon, leaning against my desk like nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" I looked up at her. Calm. Neutral. "I'm focusing on execution," I replied. She frowned, sensing the shift but not understanding it. The real resolution came during a doctor's appointment. My oncologist smiled at my latest results and said, "Your body is finally out of fight or flight. Try to keep it that way." I laughed. A short, humorless sound. "I don't think my job got the memo," I said. On the way home, sitting on the bus, I realized something simple and devastating. I had been fighting cancer with everything I had, and then going straight back to a place that treated survival as an inconvenience. That night, I updated my resume for the first time since my diagnosis. Not dramatically. No "I quit" fantasies. Just small, steady steps. One bullet point at a time. One version of myself that existed beyond that office. I didn't tell anyone at work. Not HR. Not coworkers. Definitely not M. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about choosing myself in a way I hadn't during treatment, because back then, survival was the only goal. Now dignity mattered too. I decided I would leave. Not loudly, not broken, not begging for acknowledgement. I would leave whole. And that decision, quiet, firm, mine, felt like the first real win I'd had in months. I handed in my notice on a Monday. No speech, no explanation longer than necessary. Just a short email to HR and M, professionally neutral, thanking them for the opportunity. I half expected fireworks, anger, guilt-tripping, some dramatic attempt to rewrite history. None of that happened. M replied 15 minutes later. "Understood. Wishing you the best on your health journey." Not your career, not your future. Your health journey, like a polite way of closing a tab. I felt something loosen in my chest when I read it. Not relief exactly, more like confirmation. I'd made the right call. The last 2 weeks were strange. People suddenly became nicer. Coworkers stopped by my desk to say they'd miss my insights. One even whispered, "You were the brain behind that project, you know." Too late, but noted. M avoided me entirely. She didn't schedule a farewell meeting, didn't ask for knowledge transfer, didn't even pretend to care how things would run without me. Her confidence was intact. Or at least, she wanted it to be. On my final day, I packed my desk slowly. Not because I was emotional, but because I wanted to remember the moment clearly. The plant I forgot to water. The notebook full of ideas that never had my name on them. The scarf I wore on the day she told me I'd scare clients. I left it in the trash. Walking out of the building felt anticlimactic. No applause. No justice served publicly. Just glass doors closing behind me. But here's the thing I didn't expect. The silence afterward didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. In the weeks that followed, my body changed. I slept better. The headaches stopped. I started growing hair again. Slowly, stubbornly, like a quiet rebellion. I took a contract role somewhere smaller, somewhere nobody cared what I looked like, as long as the work was good. And it was good. Looking back now, months later, I see the lesson clearly. And it's not the inspirational poster kind. If your workplace makes you feel ashamed of surviving something, it is not a workplace. It's a threat. Humiliation doesn't always come as shouting or insults. Sometimes it comes wrapped in concern, policies, and smiles. Sometimes it's erasure. Sometimes it's being told to be grateful while someone stands on your work. So if you're reading this and wondering whether you're overreacting, you're probably not. Document everything. Trust patterns, not apologies. And remember this: You don't owe loyalty to a place that treats your humanity as a liability. I beat cancer. And walking away from that office? That was me choosing to live, not just survive. I thought leaving would be the end of it. Clean break. New chapter. Trauma neatly filed away under past experience. That's not how it works. For a while after I quit, my body reacted like it was still there. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. with my heart racing, convinced I was late for a meeting that no longer existed. My phone buzzing, even with a spam notification, made my stomach drop. I'd rehearse explanations in my head for mistakes no one was accusing me of. That's when it hit me. Humiliation doesn't stop just because the source disappears. It lingers. It rewires you. I caught myself apologizing constantly in my new role, for asking questions, for taking time, for existing. Once, during a call, someone interrupted me and I automatically stopped talking, like muscle memory. After the meeting, my new manager messaged me privately. "Hey," she wrote, "you were right. Please don't drop your point next time." I stared at that sentence longer than I should have. No sarcasm, no power play, no punishment for speaking. It almost made me cry. Another thing I didn't expect. Anger resurfacing late. Not explosive anger. Delayed anger. The kind that shows up when you're finally safe enough to feel it. I'd be cooking dinner or walking outside, and suddenly remember something Em said. Something I brushed off at the time, and feel this sharp wave of rage. How dare she? How did she get away with it? Why didn't I fight harder? I had to learn to sit with those questions without letting them turn into self-blame. Because here's the truth I'm slowly accepting. Survival mode isn't cowardice. It's strategy. At the time, my body was fighting for my life. Expecting myself to also wage a perfect moral battle at work was unrealistic. There were consequences I couldn't see right away. A former coworker reached out months later. We met for coffee. She hesitated, then said quietly, "Things got bad after you left." Apparently, without me quietly fixing gaps and anticipating problems, M's leadership started cracking. Deadlines slipped. Clients asked technical questions she couldn't answer. The workflow stalled, and suddenly, the word resilience disappeared from her vocabulary. I didn't feel triumph hearing that, just sadness, and relief that I wasn't there anymore to be the invisible buffer. The strangest aftermath was reclaiming my own story. For a long time, when people asked why I left my old job, I'd say vague things like, "It wasn't the right fit," or "I needed a change after treatment." I was protecting them, the imaginary comfort of listeners, more than myself. One day, I stopped. Now I say, I was treated badly while I was sick, and I let the silence sit. You'd be surprised how many people nod when you say that. How many say, "Yeah, that happens more than people think." That's when I realized this story wasn't just mine. Humiliation thrives in quiet, in politeness, in the pressure to be professional at any cost. Speaking plainly about it feels radical, even dangerous, but it also breaks the spell. I'm still rebuilding confidence, slowly, unevenly. Some days I feel strong. Some days I still feel like the pale, bald woman being assessed for optics. But the difference now is this. When that voice tells me to shrink, I recognize it. And I don't obey it anymore. There are things people warn you about after cancer. Fatigue, brain fog, anxiety about recurrence, follow-up scans that make your stomach twist. No one warned me about how much the workplace trauma would cling to me. Even now, months later, certain phrases trigger an instant physical response. "Let's align." "We'll circle back." Just being honest. My shoulders tense. My breathing shortens. My body remembers before my brain does. I used to think humiliation was about public moments, being yelled at, shamed, exposed. What I learned instead is that the quiet kind is more corrosive, the kind that teaches you to preemptively erase yourself so no one else has to do it for you. I noticed it in small habits I carried forward. I'd over-prepare for meetings, not because the work required it, but because I feared being dismissed. I'd soften statements with unnecessary apologies. I'd hesitate before sharing ideas, waiting for someone else to speak first, just in case. One afternoon, my new manager asked why I always sent follow-up emails documenting decisions. I froze. Old instincts flared. "I just like clarity," I said quickly. She smiled. "That's fine. You don't need to protect yourself here." Protect myself. That sentence hit harder than any insult M ever threw at me, because it made something painfully clear. I had internalized the belief that every professional space was hostile by default. That competence had to be defended. That dignity was conditional. I also realized how deeply shame had rooted itself. Not shame about my work, about my body. I caught myself avoiding video calls on days I felt tired, adjusting lighting to hide scars, choosing clothes that covered more than necessary. All the while telling myself it was professionalism, when really it was fear of being judged again. One night, I stood in front of the mirror after a shower and looked at my reflection without rushing. The scars, the uneven hair growth, the body that carried me through hell and back, and I felt something unfamiliar. Respect. Not pride, not positivity. Respect. This body endured poison to keep me alive. It didn't owe anyone prettiness or comfort. That realization didn't fix everything, but it changed the direction. I stopped apologizing for taking space. I started correcting people when they interrupted me. Not aggressively, firmly, calmly, like someone who knew she had the right to be there. And here's the part I didn't expect. People adjusted. Not everyone, but enough. What stayed with me most wasn't the humiliation itself. It was the knowledge of how easily systems protect abusers when they present well, and how quickly survivors are labeled difficult when they speak. I used to think strength was endurance. Now I know it's boundaries. And if I ever manage a team one day, there's one promise I'll keep above all else. No one under me will ever feel like surviving something makes them disposable. Because I know exactly what that does to a person. And I refuse to pass it on. For a long time, I thought power looked like confidence without hesitation. A voice that filled rooms. The ability to take credit and never look back. I thought that's why she won, and I didn't. Because she knew how to perform authority while I was busy surviving. But distance changes perspective. As I settled into my new role, I started seeing a different kind of power. Quieter, less theatrical, but far more real. It showed up when a teammate admitted they didn't understand something and wasn't punished for it. When a deadline was adjusted without humiliation. When someone said, "That was my mistake," and the world didn't end. At first, I didn't trust it. Every positive interaction felt temporary, like kindness with an expiration date. I waited for the catch, the cost, the moment when competence would be used against me. It didn't come. Instead, something else happened. My ideas started getting credited properly, not just with a name attached, but with follow-up questions, with curiosity, with collaboration. The first time someone said, "Can you walk us through how you thought about this?" My throat tightened. That question had been stolen from me before, asked publicly while my work wore someone else's name. I answered anyway. Slowly, I stopped equating visibility with danger. That shift allowed me to see M more clearly, not as a villain in a story about me, but as a symptom of a system that rewards performance over substance. She wasn't powerful because she was exceptional. She was powerful because she mirrored what leadership looked like, not what it actually did. And I realized something uncomfortable, but freeing. Her success didn't invalidate my worth. My silence didn't make her right. Power isn't proven by how many people you dominate. It's proven by how little you need to. There was a moment during a team review when I disagreed with a senior colleague. Old me would have backed down instantly. This time, I said calmly, "I see it differently," and explained why. No one cut me off. No one punished me. The conversation shifted, not because I asserted dominance, but because my reasoning held. That was the moment I reclaimed something M never actually took: my authority over my own voice. Looking back, I see how humiliation distorts power dynamics. It teaches you that speaking costs too much, that visibility is dangerous, that survival requires submission. But those lessons only hold if you stay in the environment that teaches them. Outside of it, they start to unravel. I still think about her sometimes, not with anger anymore, but with clarity. She needed my silence to feel strong. She needed my invisibility to shine. I don't. And that, finally, feels like power. If I could go back and sit next to myself on one of those days, pale, exhausted, pretending everything was fine, this is what I would say. First, trust the pattern, not the explanation. One comment can be ignorance. Two can be thoughtlessness. But when behavior repeats, escalates, and always benefits the same person, that's not misunderstanding. That's strategy. I wasted months trying to decode M's words instead of reading her actions. Her actions never changed. Second, document before you need it. Not because you're planning a lawsuit or revenge, but because memory gets fuzzy when you're tired, sick, or gaslit. Writing things down is an anchor. It reminds you that you're not imagining it, that what happened actually happened. Third, accommodation is not a favor. If you are sick, disabled, grieving, or struggling, needing flexibility doesn't make you weak or expendable. Anyone who frames basic decency as generosity is already positioning themselves above you. Fourth, your body is not a branding problem. No client ever suffered because I looked pale. No deal collapsed because I was bald. That was never the issue. The issue was control, and how easily society allows people to police bodies under the guise of professionalism. Fifth, and this one is the hardest, leaving is not failure. I stayed longer than I should have because I believed endurance was strength. I thought quitting meant she won. In reality, staying was slowly destroying me, and walking away was the first decision I made, purely in my own interest. If you're in a similar situation and waiting for a sign, this might be it. If a workplace makes you feel ashamed of surviving, it is not worth your loyalty. You are allowed to protect yourself without proving anything to anyone. You are allowed to choose dignity over validation. And you are allowed to leave without burning the building down. Some battles aren't meant to be won publicly. They're meant to be survived. And then outgrown. I didn't become fearless after everything that happened. I didn't turn into some unbreakable version of myself who walks into rooms without flinching. What I became instead was aware of how power actually moves, aware of how quickly kindness disappears when you stop being useful, aware of how easily people confuse professionalism with obedience. That awareness changed how I move through the world now. I listen more closely to my instincts, the tightness in my chest, the hesitation before opening my mouth. Those aren't weaknesses. They're signals. I don't override them anymore just to appear agreeable or easy to work with. I also stopped romanticizing resilience. Surviving cancer taught me that strength isn't infinite. It's not something you spend freely to earn respect. It's something you protect. Anyone who demands it without offering safety in return doesn't deserve it. Sometimes I imagine running into M again. In an elevator, at a conference, somewhere neutral. In those fantasies, she doesn't crumble or apologize. She barely recognizes me. And that's fine, because my closure didn't come from her acknowledgement. It came from understanding that humiliation only works when you accept the story being told about you. I don't accept hers anymore. If you're reading this because something about your job feels wrong but you can't quite name it, pay attention. If you're being praised publicly and erased privately, if concern feels like control, if you're told to be grateful while your boundaries are crossed, you're not imagining it. And if you're sick, or healing, or simply human in a system that rewards performance over compassion, you are not the problem. I beat cancer. I left a workplace that tried to make survival a liability, and the quiet life I built afterward, steady, honest, mine, is the real victory.